Good evening, Edinburgh. I am the WFSE Pirate, and this is the debut of a brand new talk show on Fighting Scots Radio called Controversy. I, the WFSE Pirate, take a half an hour every Friday at 7 p.m. to discuss controversial topics from the past week. These topics can include anything from politics to sports. I have done my research. I know my facts. Some things I say will be controversial to you. Please, keep an open mind. The show will end at 7:30, at which point the phone line will be open for 1/2 hour until 8 p.m. This is for you to call in and tell me either why you agree or disagree. Controversy begins right now. Our first story of the day comes in relation to this holiday season. You may notice if you shop at major retailers such as Walmart that the Salvation Army is once again outside in the cold, collecting money, as they do every year. For those in Colorado Springs area, things have been a little different this year. There's no more annoying bell. While this anti-bell ringing law may not yet be widespread throughout the United States, it may only be a matter of time before this initiative gains momentum and works its way into cities around America. In fact, I was in touch with a spokesperson for the Salvation Army, who shall remain anonymous, who stated that there are other laws similar to the one in Colorado Springs that are in the works, if not already in effect, around the country. For the moment, the anti-bell ringing is only a proposal by the ACLU as part of their Anti-Panhandling Act. The proposed policy would ban solicitation on a 12-block stretch in downtown Colorado. This really makes me nervous because this anti-bell ringing sentiment could really be a slippery slope. As we go along, it starts off in just one or two cities, but eventually other places around America start to get this idea that, that little bell, it's annoying. And momentum starts to be gained. And eventually it turns into this thing where there's no more bell. There's no more panhandling. There's nothing at all. Nobody can even donate to the Salvation Army. And yes, things like this do actually happen. In fact, this is how every widespread thing just about happens. It starts off small. People like the idea. And eventually it grows larger and larger until the whole country becomes encapsulated with an anti-bell ringing sentiment. And honestly, people donate because of that bell. That bell says, ding, 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 ding. Hey, I'm here. Come make a donation. Your donation goes to people less fortunate. And while you're in Walmart or the mall doing whatever you got to do, you're spending hundreds of dollars. Then you've got this bell saying, hey, I know you just spent a lot of money. How about you reach in your pocket, grab $1 or $2, and donate to someone less fortunate? But my question is, why weren't these bells annoying 25 years ago when the Salvation Army was ringing them? To steal a quote from Selwyn Duke, is it any coincidence that increasing irritation with them, the American people, seems to hew closely with the growth of our society's secularist Grinch constituency? And I've got to tell you, I don't think that's a coincidence. The Salvation Army, if you did not know, is a Christian organization. Something that we've seen the government does not like. The government tries to get rid of any type of Christian organization. They're trying to kick out any type of religion. And a lot of the hatred is coming at Christian organizations. The government really is they're trying to keep them down, and it's getting to a point where it's absolutely ridiculous. And this anti-bell ringing sentiment by the ACLU is just another fact that indeed the government is really trying to shut them down. This raises the question, is this another ACLU plan for more government control? Well, most likely yes. And here's why. A Salvation Army kettle equipped with a bell ringer and bell brings in $50 to $60 per hour. 50 to 60. An unmanned kettle brings in, wait for it, a whopping $2 to $3. So let's just do some real quick math. $50 to $60 or 2 to 3. So we'll say there's a difference in $50 per kettle that is being manned, that is being rung with the bell. So $50, and we're going to multiply that times, we'll say a 10-hour day. There's $500 a day times, a few thousand locations around the country. You're talking tens of thousands of dollars being brought in by the Salvation Army every single day. But if this anti-panhandling sentiment, if this anti-bell ringing sentiment starts to work its way throughout the country, there's tens of thousands of dollars being lost every single day. And so if people are contributing fewer donations, what's going to happen? Well, they don't get as large of a tax write-off. And what happens then when people aren't getting as large of a tax write-off? Well, simply, you're going to end up paying more money to the government. And then the government gets to control your money. So yes, I think the conclusion, it is safe to say that this is definitely a goal of the ACLU, because the ACLU definitely supports as much government control as possible. After all, that is what keeps the ACLU in business. It really is. The ACLU needs the government. The government does not need the ACLU. And we're getting to a point in this country where one little ringing of the bell is so annoying that we're going to have to outlaw it. We're going to have to say no panhandling. There's an entire 12-stretch block in downtown Colorado Springs where you can't accept donations for a charity who gives money to those who are actually in need. Instead, we're at the point where this country says we're going to give no more donations. Every money that you bring, all the taxes that you bring in, we get to decide where the money goes, not you. This is a plan for more government control. The government wants to control where every penny of your income is going, and it's getting ridiculous in this country, and it needs to be stopped. This plan by the ACLU needs to be put in its place. It needs to be shot down. The Salvation Army, yes, they're going to abide by the law if it's the law, but we as the people have the choice. We have the right to say, no, this is unacceptable. I want to determine where my money goes. I want to help other people say, yes, it's a good thing to donate to the Salvation Army because people will not go out of their way to make donations. That's the fact of life. People do not go out of the way to make donations. Yeah, there are organizations like the Salvation Army, like the American Red Cross. They're going to accept donations all year round. But at the holiday time, when people are walking in and out of stores and they hear that bell, they're inspired to donate right there on the spot. And that's why this is so important. Oh, it's so frustrating when you see people trying to do good in America and it gets turned down. And that's exactly what the ACLU is doing here. You know what they say? They say every time a bell rings, an angel gets its wings. Well, no more bell, no more wings. It's time we start moving this country in the right direction. Open it up. Let those who are going to receive donations receive donations. This is a good organization. The Salvation Army does so much. And yeah, that little bell may be annoying. But that annoying little bell in your head that you hear, you just keep hearing that bell, ding, 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 ding. Maybe that's your conscience saying, hey, it's time for me to donate. And I love when I walk down in the mall and, maybe sometimes I walk past that first donation. And a lot of times there will be a second donation spot. And then I'm in the mall thinking, man, I should have donated. I'm going in here to buy somebody a gift, maybe spend $50, $100. Why can't I decide to spend $1 or $2 on somebody who doesn't have food, somebody who doesn't have clothing, somebody who doesn't have shelter? And then I walk down the mall a little bit further and look at that. There's another donation center. These donation centers being placed out, they're strategically placed out. They're bringing in money for people who truly need it. This isn't about me sitting on the street asking people to give me money. This is an organization out there on the street saying, hey, if you donate your money, it's going to go to people who really need it, who need the clothing, who need the food, who need the shelter. And honestly, it's such an important time of year When donations are between $50 and $60 as compared to 2 or 3, that makes a big difference, like I said before, in how effective we can be as a country. This is about us as a country really deciding, are we going to take a stand and say, listen, there are people out there who are going to need donation locations because we know they're not going to go out of their way. Are we going to take a stand and say, it's time to put the people in our country first and not the government in our country first? Well, I'll be back after the short break where I will discuss the New York Jets and actually another team's quarterback controversy. So keep it locked right here. Reminder, phone lines open up at 7:30. 7:30. Welcome back into WFSE 88.9 Fighting Scots Radio. Time for the lighter side of controversy. On Wednesday, Rex Ryan announced that Mark Sanchez would continue to be the starter for the 5-7 New York Jets. This comes after Sanchez was benched against the Arizona Cardinals this past Sunday after throwing 3 interceptions. There are lots of opinions flying around, some saying Greg McElroy, who replaced Sanchez last week, should get the start. Others are chanting for Tim Tebow, who will obviously not get the chance, as apparently Greg McElroy is apparently a more legitimate starter than is Tim Tebow. This opens up a whole can of worms. What to do with Tim Tebow, who is owed $2.5 million next year? Clearly, the Jets have no plan to use him, which is pretty ridiculous. I mean, he led the Broncos to the playoffs last year when everyone thought they were dead in the water. Now, everyone thinks the Jets are dead in the water. So why not give Tebow a chance? It's nearly impossible to play worse than Sanchez. Here's why. Sanchez's passer rating is 32nd out of 34 quarterbacks that meet all the qualifications. Sanchez threw 3 interceptions last week and put up no points. McElroy came in the second half, threw a touchdown, and led the Jets on a 7-6 win over the very bad Arizona Cardinals. And yet, Rex Ryan is sticking with Sanchez, who, like I said, has produced next to nothing all year. Now, I'm not saying McElroy is the answer to the Jets' problems, but Sanchez is only making things worse. The simple solution indeed has to be Tim Tebow time. If not this week, then definitely next week. But, we keep saying that. Next week, the Jets, if they lose this week, which, let's be honest, they probably will, the Jets will be completely eliminated from the playoffs. Essentially, there's nothing for the Jets to lose at this point. They're 5-7. You're not going 8-8 this year and making it into the playoffs. When you look at the facts, it's difficult to think that either Sanchez or Tebow will be back in gangrene next year. And, well, it's probably for the best. Sanchez is, as he's proven, a usable backup quarterback. And as for Tebow, well, the Jets refuse to play him. So why keep such a large name around if you won't use him? Let someone else deal with that problem. But let me go back to this quarterback controversy. And the fact that the Jets are not playing Tim Tebow is ridiculous. It's out of this world. Mark Sanchez, he's playing quarterback at a very low level. In fact, it's almost like he's playing for the Cleveland Browns. It really is that bad. Like I said, 32nd out of 34. 3 interceptions last week. Statistically, he is below average, by far below average, yet he continues to get the starting position. It's almost like Rex Ryan knows that he's not going to have a job next year because, let's face the facts, most likely he's going to be gone, as will Nerf Turner and as will Andy Reid. But yet, Rex Ryan continues to not play Tim Tebow. And that begs the question, why? Is it because he doesn't think Tim Tebow can perform? Is it because no one on the Jets likes Tim Tebow and won't try? Is it because Tim Tebow's a Christian and Rex Ryan just brought him on the team to embarrass him? Well, I don't know. These are all questions that only Rex Ryan knows. But you have to look at the facts. And the facts tell me that when crunch time comes down to it, Tim Tebow performs and he gets his team the W. He beat the Pittsburgh Steelers in the playoffs last year, and he hasn't been given a stinking shot this year to do anything. So how can you go out there and for everybody that's bashing him, How can you go out there and say that Tim Tebow is not a qualified quarterback in this league when we've seen 1 year out of him, and that year he made the playoffs? Listen, I know his throws are not the best. He doesn't have the strongest arm. He doesn't have the quickest release. But you know what? He proved he was a winner in college, and he's proved he's a winner in the NFL. And until there's further evidence to support that, you have to give the man a shot. Now, I am convinced that would you give Tim Tebow a shot, that, yes, eventually Tim Tebow will not be as good of a quarterback as you need from a starter. But until that time is come, you have to give Tebow the chance because at this point, the man has done nothing but win. And that's what's so upsetting. Now, looking at the Jets, they do have some quarterback options for next year because, well, let's face it, Mark Sanchez and Tim Tebow probably not going to be there. You've got Mike Vick from the Eagles, the man who was supposed to start for the Seahawks, Matt Flynn. And finally, whichever quarterback gets let's go from the Cardinals, either Skelton or Cobb, because I can't imagine both will stick around for another season. Now, one parting thought on the topic of quarterback. For the same reason that I think Tim Tebow needs to get playing time, I also think Terrell Pryor, the backup for Carson Palmer, needs to see some action for what he can do on the Oakland Raiders. There seems to be some sentiment going around California area that it's time to try something new. Carson Palmer looked horrible last night. The Oakland Raiders, well, they're not going anywhere. Their season is officially over. And maybe Terrell Pryor can do what Tim Tebow did. Bring him in. Give him a shot. It can't hurt. Listen, don't go anywhere. I'm talking the fiscal cliff after these short messages. You're back on 88.9 Fighting Scots Radio. Reminder, phone lines open at 7:30. Over the past few weeks, there's been a lot of talk about the fiscal cliff that the U.S. economy could go over if the Obama tax rates are indeed put into place starting January 1st. There's a lot of speculation that these tax rates will drive the U.S. economy into another recession. This is where I'll begin the story. First off, will the tax rates put our economy into a recession? No, I don't think they will. Now, with economics, it's all a guessing game until the game is over. But here's why I don't think it will cause a recession. The new tax rates will only tax at a higher rate on said portion over the stipulated amount. A lot of talk is going on about those who make over $250,000 being taxed at 37 or 39%. What this means is that the first $250,000 will be taxed just like everybody else. It's only money made after the $250,000 point that will be taxed at the 39%. You may think that's a lot of money, but in reality, it's nowhere close to the highest this country has ever seen. The time period during World War II actually had the highest tax rate ever, and that was for those who made over $200,000, which is equal to $1.6 million today. But those who made over $200,000 back in 1954 were taxed at 91% of their income. People making over $250,000, they will do a few things. One is they will donate more money. And two, will not worry about it because they're already making a lot of money. The excess, the costs do not outweigh how much they're going to be making. In fact, Warren Buffett, one of the richest and most successful businessmen, has released what he believes is the ultimate tax plan for America. Buffett says that workers making over $1 million would pay 30% of their entire income in taxes, and those making over $10 million per year would pay 35% of their income in taxes. Realistically, that's not too far off from what President Obama has proposed. Now, having said all of that, does this mean America is at the point where it should be, where these taxes should be implemented immediately or on January 1st, like is going to happen? No. And here's why. America is once again reaching the place where our debt ceiling needs to be raised. With a raise in the debt ceiling, that just leads to more spending, more government spending, and the idea that it doesn't matter, we can just keep raising the debt ceiling. Also, The proposed tax increases from President Obama would not generate enough revenue to run the government for 10 days. There are still 355 more days that need to be accounted for. What President Obama is trying to do is run contractionary fiscal policy. This is to rein in the inflation that has been rampant since 1999 and hopefully create a surplus. But he's going about it the wrong way. Currently, our economy still needs to recover. I think very few people would argue that. But what needs to be done is America needs to cut down on government spending. This too is a form of contractionary fiscal policy. The difference is this, that people in America will be more productive because of lower tax rates, leading to more people working and more taxes actually being paid. Also, with the proposed tax increase, the debt ceiling will once again need to be raised. And this will need to be done. The debt ceiling will need to be raised in order for America to not default on its debts. And raising the debt ceiling is not parallel to contractionary fiscal policy. In fact, they're opposites. So yes, our government needs money to operate. But when it comes down to the basics, America has a spending problem. And this spending problem will not be controlled simply by raising taxes on everyone by just a little bit. I have 3 proposals that will help our country move into the green. First is make government cuts. It may not be popular because, well, there are a lot of Democrats in power and they're in favor of larger government. But right now, when you look at the facts, government spending is out of control. $1.6 trillion in debt last year. Analysts said it would only be $600 billion. Why are they off by $1 trillion? Maybe someone's paying the man? Hey, I don't know. That's an inside conspiracy. I'm not going to get into that. But what I do know is that it's $1.6 trillion last year, and it's going to be right on track for that this year as well. My other spending proposal is free trade agreements with countries in the Pacific, something the Obama administration is already working on. I just hope they get it going soon, because I do think it's going to be a good thing for the American economy to have free trade agreements. We can send them stuff, they can send us stuff, and it's going to be all tax-free. There are going to be no taxes on anything going in and out of the country. To a lot of these countries, it's going to lower how much we as Americans have to spend, and it's going to allow American companies to be more willing to negotiate with these other countries. And finally, to get our country into the green, we need to create jobs. One way of doing this is to approve the entire Keystone Pipeline from Canada all the way to the Gulf. This will create thousands of jobs and help out the middle-class worker who will see a drop in the price of the pump. Now, this debt ceiling, things right now are going down between the Democrats and the Republicans. It really is. And I think the Republicans will be willing to concede a debt ceiling if the Democrats show to the Republicans, say, hey, you increase the debt ceiling temporarily, and we're going to cut back on how much spending we have. This is how a compromise is worked out, and I really think that a compromise is going to be needed in this situation to avoid what happened last year in 2011 when it came down to the final minutes. Well, I am your WFSE Pirate. Phone lines open at 7:30, 814-732-2886. Thanks for listening.